Social anxiety or social revolution, Star Trek? Yes, episode 285 of Trekland, Tuesdays Live, with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. I'm going to get on a soapbox here. Plus, I have some news. There's a lot going on and a lot of things I've been sitting on and waiting to get to, and we're finally there. You know, this topic today was driven by what's been going on the last few weeks. And I mean, especially here in Trek world, not Trek land per se, but in greater Trek world, I don't know. I think you might have a clue. Social anxiety or social revolution. What I'm talking about here is the uproar that Elon Musk has brought to Twitter and how it seems to be sliding, I don't know, people are saying back into 4chan territory where the Looney Tunes, the Looney Tune goofball fascists and bots and trolls are going to be running everything. How quickly is everyone being squeezed out? Whether just being on Twitter is helping his business model, or if his business model is shot and it's just really a very expensive PR device he wants to do, whether it's ego or it's, I don't know, his Russian friends, I don't know. Whether it's just the old apartheidist in him that got family riches from a blood emerald mine. All this bit about Elon Musk, the hero, and his problematic inclusion in Star Trek canon now, right? Aside from being mentioned in the same breath as Neil Armstrong and the Wright brothers, also as the namesake of a middle school, of Tilly's Middle School. My retcon on that, my headcanon, is that someone else in his family was named Elon Musk who redeemed the family name, and that's the famous person that they're all referencing 200 years from now, 300 years from now. We can only hope. Maybe this all ends in a completely different U-turn ending to this life saga. I don't know. But as for right now, the world's in an uproar because what's happened, especially here in our Twitter space, in our Trek space, is that a lot of people looking for something to go to found, well, several apps. First of all, it was the Mastodon stampede, which is pretty good for an extinct animal. That's the image I keep. Yes, I and many others went over and got an account on Mastodon. What about you? As we go through this and as I get back to the chat, I'm going to be interested to see, number one, who was even on Twitter to begin with, and or who cares. Because it's not, it's celebrities, it's people getting their message out, and it's people actually communicating. It's people who like to debate, who people like to be snarky, and people who like to poison the well. And some people just like it for everyday communication. A lot of people around the world, even more so than the US, were using it for political organization. Some of these mini revolutions and social upheavals that we're seeing around the world, hopefully for the better, it was an everyman blue-collar way for people to connect without controlling communication networks. And they are all pissed at what Elon Musk seems to be driving the platform for, either to bankruptcy or just totally changing the tone. That Jack Dorsey they had at least had moderations. And in fact, in the old days, like last year, like February, Twitter to me was always the best regulated of all the social platforms that were popularly used. Now, look, over the last few years, Facebook, after all the U.S. election hoo-ha, after the Brexit manipulation, after a lot of manipulation in a lot of countries, after the Russian infusion of bots and trolls and the Russian internet army, people were getting icky, and Facebook's refusal to bear down and let a lot of the fake news and misinformation flood the airwaves. Now, I've said this before. This whole thing about electronic media, the social platforms, I grew up and worked in Dead Tree Media. And I know it's on one hand, but in the big picture here, on the big picture, I was the editor of a small weekly. And then the suburban next door paper, I was a reporter and editor for. And our managing editor was long established, the Norman Transcript. It's a shadow of its former self and glory right now, but we always would print letters to the editor. And we're talking pre-internet days, gang. So this was an important way for people to sound off. Even if it was half the time, it was the same 6 people writing letters. But the policy was with that and with paid ads, especially at campaign time, special election time, was yes, people submitted letters to the editor. They had to be factual, they had to be signed. There could be no anonymous letters. We would withhold a name for safety, for sanity, as long as we knew, as long as we do. If a letter turned up over the transom or in the mailbox that was unsigned, we wouldn't consider it. Now, if they signed it, we had a name and an address, we knew it was a real person, and they requested anonymity, then we would honor that. Name withheld. But we would know who it was in case for a greater responsibility. But we took responsibility. Paid ads even could not be insanely outrageous. They could not make wild claims, even though the person was paying for the ad. They had to, and we would push the envelope. And there were some ugly races sometimes, but you couldn't come in and just call somebody randomly names. You had to be responsible because we ultimately had to be responsible. There's a legal term precedent for this. But as the publishers of the paper, Dead Tree Media paper, we, just like the old broadcasters had to be responsible. Even when you had like Florida R Turbo, even when TV stations had editorial replies, they had to pass muster. They couldn't go against FCC guidelines. And that was the broadcast days. And a lot of things get around the bend because the broadcast code, the FCC wasn't allowed to keep up. Thank you for banning the fairness doctrine. Thank you for banning the ban on, or getting rid of the ban on monopoly ownership. But since Reagan in the mid-'80s, there was a lot of deregulation of media, and I know that's the big picture where we got to. But I'm just saying, even on a local level, local TV stations, and the one I was most familiar with, local papers, we were still the responsible parties. So to sit here and see all the social apps across a spectrum here, at some way along the way, and even the ones who are notorious, some of the forums, take no responsibility. Free speech, free speech, free speech. Well, we get back to the simplest of the free speech arguments. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't even yell theater in a crowded fire. But there is a bottom line. There is a limit to free speech when it becomes irresponsible. Now, that's a black and white issue there. It can cost lives. Well, in a slow motion way, that's the issue here. What can cause lives? Now, reeling this back to Star Trek, I don't know if we're talking about causing lives, costing lives, but there are several emergent communities and a couple of communities that have been out for, 400 years that see that as all dangerous, that it's a slow motion, that we see the attack on a leading politician's spouse. We see some of the shootings that have been going on lately against targeted LGBTQ communities, Jewish communities, Asians. I mean, go down the line. And there is a huge debate once again about what's the content of our social platforms. I don't understand to this day why responsibility of Twitter and Facebook and go down the line, why that's any different than the responsibility we had to offer. No, we weren't there to gatekeep. We were there to have the guardrails, even the guardrails that weren't at the right edge of the road or the left edge of the road. But I mean, like the guardrails in the bar ditch and halfway across the pasture, a guardrail somewhere where it wasn't just willy-nilly. So that's the comfort zone. That's what's going on. Where this will end, I don't know. But then we still do have the marketplace. We do still have advertisers refusing to advertise. We have people voting with their feet, voting with their dollars. That goes for advertisers as well as, of course, users. And if you're running a platform that's barely got 47 people on it, as we've seen so often in the last few years, people want to run off and take their ball and go play somewhere else, but they're only going to have a few people with them because the vast majority don't want to put up with it. And increasingly, the vast majority see the danger. So, big picture enough for everybody? Because what that has meant is a lot of celebrities, a lot of people who are activists, a lot of people who are leading members of communities including within Star Trek, with our Star Trek fandom and our active people. Later on today, Robert Duncan McNeil and Tim Russ and Chase Masterson are going to jump in with a Trek the Vote co-sponsored event to do another phone banking for getting voters out to the polls in the Georgia runoff election. There you go. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So many people who are active in the world, and they're not hunkered down with their heads in the sand. Cardassian vole or Okie prairie dog, take your pick. But a lot of people basically have stampeded off Twitter. A lot of people, like moi, have kept a foot in both worlds. I feel, though, like, I don't know what you're doing. I feel like the polar bear with one foot on each ice floe. How do you straddle this? I'm just angry because Twitter was was the strongest platform I was on after 10, 12 years. And I'm sorry to lose people. I'm sorry to feel like it's going away. And most of all, I'm really sorry to have to spend time straddling especially when Mastodon is having growing pains. The server issue, it's a different feel. On one hand, it feels the same as Twitter. On the other hand, it feels differently. I don't know how many of you have tried Mastodon. It's a little clunky. Part of it is the way I see the U.S. trying to do the English system and the imperial system and the metric system. If we had just made a clean break, it would have been much more accepted among the mainstream population, beyond scientists. But as it is, trying to keep a foot in both worlds, you wind up being twice as exhausted. And I don't know if that's going to be the case with Twitter and Mastodon, or even Hive, which is run by 3 people. The 2 co-owners finally took on an employee a week ago, a third one. Because Mastodon has a few, it's so decentralized, yay, but it's also very decentralized. So and the bottom line to all this, or the upper layer to all this, is a lot of people, they don't want to be political, they don't want to be technical, they don't want to spend they just want to sound off and pop off and have fun. They want to spread the cheer, they want to spread information, they want to, the good kind. Like, oh my God, did you see how much was implied in each increasingly, since I did the second opinion prodigy this week? I go through, start skimming that. There are 17 multi-layers. People just want to have fun. And a lot of people saw the only way they can continue to do that, or to take a stand, was to go to Mastodon. I'm just curious. I've been waiting for this for 5 years with Facebook. Facebook has gotten increasingly icky, increasingly, I want to say, irrelevant, but it's just so damn omnipresent that it's everywhere. It's still, if you've got something to say, or you got something to do, or share, or sell, or buy, it's still a good deal to go to Facebook, and you can still kind of limit the crap around you. Obviously, Twitter's a little more free form, although it was heading that way. Now, Katie bar the door, who knows? Mastodon feels, on one hand, you can really guard your community, but on the other hand, how the hell does anybody find your community? It does have hashtags. There are things they're working at. Now, we may have a lot of tech heads in the chat today who may have something to say about all this, and that would be awesome. That would be awesome. The weird thing is that then you've got Instagram over here, which I have loved for ages, but I just keep feeling like nobody from sci-fi and Star Trek is on Instagram except the cosplay. Mostly young women. And, Instagram was supposed to be pretty pictures, and a lot of them can be very pretty. Or your meal, or your flowers, or your baby picture, whatever it is, your little kids walking your dog. I see you, Mike Sussman. Those, Instagram was always very visual, and it always felt safe. And so far, even though Facebook bought and has owned Instagram for the last few years, it's like a lot of the ickiness from Facebook hasn't transferred over to Instagram, thank God. I'm still sitting here wondering when the Trek world is going to come over, and the sci-fi world in general, and discover Instagram. Now, as more, TikTok took over, and Instagram kind of countered that with Reels. So a lot of people, especially, under 30s, just jumped right to TikTok. And now TikTok is expanding. Will TikTok ever be for grandmas and force the kids to go find something else, like happened to Facebook? I don't know. I'm, literally, are we in social anxiety or social revolution right now? What I'm saying is, I'm wondering how many folks didn't mess with Mastodon. If they were Trek Twitter and they left Twitter, they didn't even mess with Mastodon. They just went over and tried out Instagram. They just went to try out Instagram. I keep wondering because I wondered why Instagram didn't really take off more in Trek and the sci-fi community, pop culture community at large, aside from the cosplay girls. I would say cosplay guys. I don't know how many I see. I met one at SoonerCon this year. I was like, oh, this is for men too. And of course, yeah, there's lots of guys doing cosplay. I just don't know how many of them billboard themselves on Instagram that much. But then I'm not deep diving the degree of superhero cosplay. It's the Trek overlap, that comes my way. But I keep wondering if Instagram is going to have a boost now. Will Instagram take some of the Twitter refugee overflow? Will it all go to Mastodon? Is Mastodon going to be found lacking and make some evolutionary tweaks? Will somehow Hive turn out to be a big thing? I don't know. They're going to have to add some more folks. If they get really popular and then get really toxic, they're going to need more than 3 people to keep up with it, or else lose all that great buzz they've been getting. I don't know. It's the big picture item to me is I've got enough other stuff to do. I finally picked up a third social, Instagram. The last thing I wanted, it felt like I halfway knew how to navigate Twitter and I could take it or leave it. Facebook, I was still keeping a hand in separating personal from Trek. My personal page, I go there once a month, maybe. And for those of us who are trying to get our word out, and we have services, we've got products, we do fun stuff, we have free stuff. Where we're going with it, yeah, I still have Trekland. Where you're watching me now, we're doing more with YouTube even. YouTube is desperately trying to be a social platform, not just the world's number 2 or number 1 search engine beyond Google, which blew me away the first time I was told that little factoid. But you can't, I don't know, I don't think you can live your entire online life just on YouTube as far as connecting with people. Everybody's going to like video at each other. I don't know. What I know is this last month, the last couple of months, there's been confusion. It's not quite like the Titanic sinking and quick find a lifeboat, but it does feel, or the Germans are, the last train out of Paris is coming, and we're all getting on the train to somewhere, to Marseille. But it's been an interesting few weeks and moments. And then, of course, as I said, there's the world that doesn't do social, or they're experimenting by getting on Facebook, or they're just laughing at everybody from their MySpace page. I don't know. I'm curious what everybody here is doing. If you even care, if you were on Twitter to begin with, if you say, this is what I meant all along. Except in my mind, Twitter was the cleanest, aside from Instagram, which still was owned by Facebook. I don't know what your stories have been like, those who have migrated over to Mastodon and embraced it fully versus some of the wimpy ones like us, like me, who have gone there and posted but still haven't left Twitter behind because Twitter is so easy and convenient. And I managed to keep the walls up. I don't sit on Twitter all day. I have hours when I can sit down and participate. So far, the ugly part, if that is growing, and I see news stories where it's obviously growing, has it intruded into my world? Am I adding to it by staying? I see conflicting stories about people who will not stay and not contribute a data point, much less a dime, to the whole thing. And the early days of wondering if this is such a financial fiasco that's going to collapse, if even the money is the point, or if it's just having the talking chamber to blather on about, to bring back from the edge, since insanely radical, wackadoodle, extremist speaking and talking was being pushed back to the shadows where it used to sit instead of being mainstreamed. And if Twitter really does go down, people trying to de-mainstream Twitter and if that's going to be Mastodon or something else, or another one that you never mentioned. I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. And I was really curious among a lot of topics lately. I'm really curious to see what comes up in our chat when we revisit that. All right. Well, now that I've set that one afire, I really, in fact, I will probably be taking some kind of a poll. You want to get on my list? You want to be on my socials? Because on the different platforms, I maybe just try to take a basic poll about where people are. Basically led by the Twitter X's. In fact, I did this on Mastodon the other day in a reverse kind of way. I asked who that was following me. I was noticing a lot of new names on Mastodon, and this is the other thing. I get the feeling there are a lot of new names with a Trek component, people who are interested in Trek who would want to follow someone like me and converse, and everybody else for that matter, if they're new to Mastodon that weren't even on Twitter. And the last I checked, I had about, I don't know, 20 responses. More than that, but 55% said they'd never followed me anywhere, but they were following me on Mastodon. And 45 had been on Twitter following me and came over. And then 5%, I forget, knew me on Facebook, but not on Twitter. So it's an interesting, this is not going to end anytime soon. It's going to be driven by politics and by financials and by maybe bombshells along the way. I don't know. Hopefully, I mean metaphorical ones, not literal. We'll see. I'm just intruding. Once again, you feel like I'm just trying to have fun with this fandom, and all these real world events are shaping what you do and the time you have to spend in learning something new or regurgitating. You know, Twitter was a place where I didn't just talk about Star Trek. I did do politics. I did do my Sooners football. I love to talk about Will Rogers on Twitter. Twitter was my one platform that I wasn't keeping just for Trek. And that's probably why I think I was bearing down on 13,000 or 14,000 followers, which is cool. So that's a consideration too. Now, if the whole place goes radioactive, if the tornado's coming, you abandon home. You get to the shelter. So that's what's another thing that's interesting to see play out. And just how much some of these disturbing trends, do they actually fulfill? Do they get thwarted? Does the weight of reality, whether it's common sense or financials, does something else intervene here? Does old Elon get bored and move on to something else? I wish he'd stuck with the boring holes under the mountains thing. That would have been so great. That Santa Monica to Burbank slog is horrible without a freeway. I have to announce that at long last, guess what? Portal 47's 7th annual open house. Yes, we have a confirmed date. It will be a week from tomorrow. It will be Wednesday, December 7th. Ominous for two reasons. One of them Trekish. 7 p.m., although this may bump up earlier. I think we're going to really make it 6 p.m., but you know what I'm saying. What you want to do is be there for Wednesday, December 7th. What you want to do is go to LarryNemecek.com, click on the link, and get reserved. Get your ticket, because we're going to have all kinds of cool giveaways. The reason what's finally come down is, of all the people and schedules and everything we were juggling, I'm really honored to say that our open house guests this year, in the likes of, Bob Butler, the director of The Cage, Renee Echeverria, Mike Westmore, Robert Hewitt Wolf. Last year, Mike McMahon for 2 hours. He graced us. All of that. This year, our special guest, can you see this? Yep. Ira Stephen Bear is going to be our open house guest. And I, as usual, I'm going to try to not be so same-o. I mean, we've got the DS9 doc. We've got so much out there and revised and podcasted now beyond Terry and Paula's DS9 companion. All the interviews over the years, I'm going to try to especially steer us toward the nooks and crannies of Ira's career and Ira's Trek overlap. That may not just be the hardcore same old once again stories from DS9. Although we'll have questions from the chat audience. We'll have prior submitted questions. People can ask what they want to ask. We will try to cram it all in. But I'm just excited. We're alternating here between legacy creatives and modern ages creatives. And I'm really excited about who we can have already. I have a rain check for next year's guest already because of the way this all came down. But I'm so thrilled to have Ira. It's all awesome. Maybe I should have 2 open houses a year. I don't know. But this is the time when we open the gates of Portal, which, is a paid subscription service. We have a guest every month behind the scenes, no actors allowed, because that's the forgotten, overlooked, and so insightful angle to all the Treks you know and love. And Legacy Trek is not all there is now. We've had 5 years of new Trek, and that's something to get into too. But we just had a documentary a couple years ago. We've had some ancillary things, and Ira and I have crossed paths even a couple of times. So I'm really excited about that. Again, you want to go to LarryNemecek.com, click in, reserve your spot, because we will have giveaways. Aside from, we'll have a sample roundtable at the beginning. We will have Ira for at least an hour. Maybe we'll even talk a little bit more than that. We do have a holiday goodie coming. There will only be 14 of them. I'm going to tease you and leave it at that because we'll have more on that this week. But for right now, with all of that going on, and on top of all that, our TeePublic store, the whole first half of the month of December is going to be one big holiday sale as well. And I'm excited because we have a holiday design up. Thank you, Scott. And also I'm so thrilled, we have Cadet Alice. We have Cadet Alice shirts. And she's tickled. And yes, I checked with her mom. Parents are okay with that. I don't think we're going to have to be selling stock shares. But I just think it's awesome. And so, yes, thank you, Chris, for the cute little caricature cartoony there of Alice. So I love this. I know the Hageman brothers and Aaron Walke love Cadet Alice. We're going to work on that too. And we just got to film some new episodes over the Thanksgiving weekend. So that's all exciting. But everything in our TeePublic store and everything at TeePublic, you can browse around for days, is on the 40% off. In other words, the t-shirts are 13, I think, right now. And then there's everything else too. There's the computer cases and tote bags and stickers and yada yada. Even travel mugs. So that's all exciting. And what is exciting as we bear down to the end of the year is the fact that I get to thank all these folks for their support. So thank you once again for our Patreons, our TTL clubbers, Diana Hopkins, Lawrence Todd, Keith Rombach, Nathaniel Robinson, Robin Wilson, Anne Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Andrew Jasimski, Pranakasha Productions, Gay Kevin Lundstrom, and Galinda Bruton. Thank you. And especially our live wires, Halbjörn Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, and Casey Shafsky. Really, really thank you all. The coming of the new year has some changes in Trekland Tuesdays Live that we're going to be adding to. So I want to thank everybody who's joining. And if you want to help, it's the end of the month. They're about to make this. You can jump in today and be a Patreon. Simple $5 and $10 levels. A shout out and also access to our early years of Portal 47 guest backstage interviews. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. Appreciate all of that. And again, if it's Tuesday, it must be also a Tuesday twofer. The Trek Files is up, our podcast from Roddenberry. It's there, podcast.roddenberry.com is where all of them are. But our page on Facebook is where you can also get our documents of the week. It's the only podcast with paper. This week, we found an ancient early edition of the Star Trek Official Fan Club magazine, number 26, from May 1982, the month before the Wrath of Khan came out, Star Trek II. And of course, our guest is the incredible man of a million fandom careers, Dan Madsen. We talked about the early days of the magazine, but also just the dynamic of media and the scope, the pace of fandom. When you got your fan news once or twice a month in print, not just to wax nostalgic, but what that dynamic was like and how it compares to today. And also just kind of his journey with the trust with the studio, how the studios and licensing and publicity worked in those days versus now. What's the same, what's different? And some great Star Trek II stories about those days. For those of you who weren't around in the take flyers and pass the word. That was the original way of going viral. Anyway, it's another great visit with Dan. Check that out wherever you might catch it. Also, the reminder, if you are cruising, and even if you're not out of LA on the official Star Trek cruise, we're offering 2 special Trekland treks, calling them the away days, the day before you disembark and the day after you return. Or if you just want to get yourself to LA and jump in, each bus has 18. We're already selling seats. So you want to make sure and jump in. You can go to LarryNemecek.com, click at it. It'll take you right to the link. You can see what that's about. 4 stops in the day plus lunch. Get yourself to Hollywood. Same thing. Go to my page, click on the link for the big tour. We haven't offered this since 2016, since the 50th, but Terrace Cassidy at Geek Nation Tours and I were offering under his umbrella the 10-day West Coast away mission, LA and San Francisco. Again, all filming sites, all with me to give you the background, all ripe for your cosplay, your prop play, whatever you want to do. We'll help you achieve it, your real life away mission. And of course, if you just ever want to come to LA on your own, you can do a Trekland Treks in advance. We set it up, we plan it, it's to your specs. You can do that too at my site or treklandtreks.com. So much of this was starting to bubble up, especially on my end, and then the pandemic hit. So we've had 8 or 10, 12 Treksters go, but I'm excited for more and more people to find that out as a different kind of experience, especially since apparently there's no official convention next year. Some folks are going to be looking to add to their experience quotient next year for Star Trek. That's going to do it, gang. Aside from reminding you that for now, it's Larry Nemecek on Twitter and Mastodon now, and even Hive, although I don't think I've even said hi over there yet. No, we're there. Larry Nemecek's Trekland on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And Instagram. And good old Facebook, yeah. Portal47.net is the place. You can go check out the website now, but I really, if you're curious about Portal 47 and just want to have a great couple of hours of Trek entertainment, that's next Wednesday. Go over to LarryNemecek.com, click in for that, and read all about it. Read all about it here. Get your ticket at my site. That's going to do it for the main stage of the show. Shout out to everybody watching us later on YouTube. Hey, if you ever get a chance, you too can be here live with the chat, which I'm about to say and jump into. Until we do that, just a brief moment here, just to say for all the YouTubers leaving us now, stay well, do all the things, stay woke, check your sources, and trek well, everybody.